Hello kids, welcome to today's lesson. This is your science teacher, Uncle Ernesto. The last time we met, we talked about a group of animals called insects. And today we are going to look at another group of animals called birds. So our topic for today is on birds. And I believe you are all familiar with birds. But before we continue with the lesson, let's go over the homework you were given the last time on insects. 1. State 2 examples of useful insects. State 2 examples of useful insects. The first one is butterfly, the animal butterfly. And we said butterflies help with the pollination of plants. The second one is the bee. The bee also helps with the pollination of plants as well as producing honey for human use. 2. State 3 examples of harmful insects. State 3 examples of harmful insects. The first one is the mosquito. And we said the mosquito gives us a disease called malaria. So it is very harmful. And in the lesson, we said mosquitoes kill more than 700,000 people every year. So they are very dangerous to human existence. 2. We talked about the locust. And we said the locust also can spoil or destroy a whole farm. What they do is that they chew the leaves or they eat the leaves of the plant, which the plant also uses during photosynthesis. So the locust is also harmful to our crops. Then the last one is the house fly. The house fly. The house fly also contaminates our food or anything edible. And then when you eat them, you can suffer from dysentery or even food poisoning. I believe you all had the answers correct. Well done. Now, let's move on to our today's topic on insects. Let's look at our lesson objectives. By the end of the lesson, you will be able to 1. Describe what a bird is. Describe what a bird is. 2. State 3 examples of birds. State 3 examples of birds. And then 3. Mention 3 features of a bird. Mention 3 features of a bird. So by the end of this lesson, I expect that you'll be able to describe what a bird is, state 3 examples of birds, as well as features of a bird. Let's begin with what a bird is. What is a bird? What is a bird? When we say a bird is a vertebrate animal with feathers and wings. And when we say vertebrate, we are talking about animals having backbone. Animals having backbone. So when we were talking about insects, we said that insects do not have backbone. But when you talk about birds, they have backbone. They are animals with backbone. So when you look on your screen, you will see the picture of a bird there. And you will see a bone from this place. You see a thin bone here. And that is what we call the backbone. So birds are animals with backbones. And we are also saying that they have feathers. And as you see on the screen, you see feathers here. They have feathers. And then they also have wings. So you see the bird there with wings. So a bird is a vertebrate, that is animal with backbone, with feathers and wings. So when you say a bird, it's an animal with a backbone, with feathers and wings. Let's look at some examples of birds. Examples of birds. You see this bird on your screen. So if you look at it, we have about 3 birds there. Let's look at their names. The first bird is called duck. Duck. And I believe you are all familiar with duck. The second one is the hen. Hen. The third bird is called dove. Dove. So we have duck, hen, and then dove. They are all examples of birds. Let's look at more examples. What's the name of the first one? Yeah, the cock. That's the male fowl, the cock. We also have the guinea fowl. Guinea fowl. And you can see this guinea fowl in their numbers when you go to the northern part of our country. We also have the parrot. You see that beautiful bird there with the yellow head and green covering the parts of the body. So we have the cock, the guinea fowl, and parrot as examples of birds. Let's look at more. Can you identify any of the birds there? Yes, the first one is the vulture. Vulture. And you normally see these birds in their numbers when you visit any refuse dump. The vulture. We also have the ostrich. The ostrich. Then the third one is the eagle. So the vulture, ostrich, and eagle are examples of birds. We have another 3. Can you identify any of them? The first one is called the turkey. The first one is called the turkey. The second one is called crane. Crane. And you normally see this type of birds anywhere you see cattle. Anywhere you see cattle moving, you see these cranes along with them. They normally pick some insect or some animals, small animals on the cattle. So whenever you see cattle, you see this type of birds there. Then the last example we are looking at is the hawk. The hawk. And they are very dangerous to our chicks. When you have a hen at home and the hen is having or have chicks, you see that hawks will be visiting your house very often as they want to catch some of your chicks. So these are examples of birds. And all these examples of birds, according to what a bird is, they all have backbones, they all have feathers covering their bodies, and then they also have wings. Now, let's look at some features of a bird. Some features of a bird. When we say an animal is a bird, what are some of the things that you can see and then be sure that this is truly an animal called bird? The first feature is that birds have a beak. Birds have a beak. We humans call ours mouth, and in birds we call it a beak. So you can see that all the birds here are having a beak. All the birds here are having a beak. And if you look at it carefully, you will see that the beaks of these birds are not the same. The beaks of these birds are not the same. the beak of a bird determines the type of food that bird eats. So the type of food the bird eats will determine the type of beak the bird will also have. And the first is that they use their beak to eat. They use their beak to eat. As you see the bird there eating with its beak. What again do they use the beak for? They use the beak to clean their feathers. They use the beak to clean their feathers. So as you see the bird there, the bird is cleaning its feathers with the beak. So birds have a beak, and that is one feature of a bird. The next feature is that the body of a bird is covered with feathers. The body of a bird is covered with feathers, and you can see the feathers there. This bird is covered with feathers, and you can see the types of feathers here. And normally we humans use the feathers to decorate a hat, and then we wear it to program. So the body of a bird is covered with feathers, and these feathers trap heat so that it will keep the bird warm. These feathers trap heat to keep the bird warm. Let's look at another feature. Birds have two wings. Birds have two wings. They use their wings to fly. They use their wings to fly. So you see the first wing here. This is wing number 1, and then wing number 2. The wings are placed left and then right of the bird. So birds have two wings, and they use these wings to fly. As you see the bird there flying. So the wings enable them to fly. And every bird have two wings. Another feature of a bird is that they have hollow bones. They have hollow bones. If you look at the bone we have here, you can see a hole inside, and that is what we call hollow. And the bone you have down here is the bone of a bird, and the bone of a bird is hollow. That means that you have a lot of spaces inside this bone. If you take human beings, our bones are filled with calcium, about 99% calcium, and then about more than 80% phosphorus. Our bones are filled with calcium and phosphorus. But when you take the bone of a bird, the bone of a bird is hollow, and this hollow bone is filled with oxygen, and that makes the bird very lighter and helps the bird to fly with its wings. So the hollow bones is filled with air, and this air helps the bird to become light so that it can fly. So you can see that because of the hollow bones of birds, it makes them lighter to enable them to fly. As you see the bird on the screen flying. Another feature of a bird, birds have two legs with 4 toes. Birds have 2 legs with 4 toes. So if you look at the hen here, this is leg number 1 and then leg number 2. So birds have 2 legs. And as a human being, how many toes do you have? Yes, I know that we have 5 toes, but the birds have 4 toes. And normally the first toe looks backwards. That's the first toe. Its direction looks backwards, and the rest of the 3 looks forward. So we have toe number 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So birds have 4 toes. And if you take the toes here. We call this claws. As you see on the screen, the 4 toes makes the claws of the bird. The claws of the bird. And what is the use of the claws? Birds use their claws to hold tree branches. Birds use their claws to hold tree branches. They also use it to swim. They also use the claws to swim. Some also use to climb. They use the claws to climb. Some use it to hold food. To hold food. And some also use it to catch prey. Others also use the claws to fight. So these are some of the uses of the claws of a bird. So if this feature says that birds have 2 legs with 4 toes, and the 4 toes makes up the claws of the bird, and the bird uses the claws to hold tree branches, swim, climb, hold food, and then catch prey and also fight. Another feature is birds have tail. Birds have tail. So if you see the eagle here, there's the tail of the eagle. There's also the tail of the dove, and there's the tail of the parrot. And you see that the tails are not the same, but all birds have tail. And what is the use of the tail? The tail here, the tail controls the direction in which they fly. The tail controls the direction in which the bird flies. And then the second use of the tail is that it helps them to land on the ground after flying. It also helps them to land on the ground after flying. So birds have tail. Now let's look at how birds reproduce. That's how birds make new ones. How birds make new ones. Birds lay eggs to reproduce, and they sit on the eggs to hatch. They lay eggs to reproduce, and they sit on the eggs to hatch. So you see the hen there with some eggs under it, and this hen is sitting on the eggs, and after some days, that is about 21 days, the egg will hatch, and then new chicks or new babies will be made. So how birds reproduce is that they lay eggs to reproduce, and after laying the eggs, they sit on the eggs. Sitting on the eggs applies heat to the eggs, and this enables the egg to hatch and then bring out new chicks. Now, we are done with some features of a bird. So I believe that if you call any animal a bird, you know the reason why you are calling that animal a bird, because of some of the features you've learned today. Let's look at some funny tidbits about birds, some facts about birds. We have a bird on your screen called the hummingbird. The hummingbird. This bird flies backwards and upside down. This bird flies backwards and upside down. So you see that if the bird is moving upwards, you see that the beak will be facing the sky, and then the back will be facing the ground when the bird is moving upwards. And they normally also turn upside down. So this bird moves backwards and also turns upside down. And this bird is called the hummingbird. You always see birds flying forward, but this bird flies backwards. Let's look at another bird, the eagle. The eagle. And the eagle is the strongest of all the birds. The eagle. if not the strongest, one of the strongest of all the birds. And there's something nice about eagles. And even the Bible says that those that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength as eagles. Why is the Bible saying the Lord will renew your strength as an eagle? Eagles live up to 70 years. Eagles live up to 70 years. And when they get to 40 years, they become weak. Their beak becomes weak. Their claws becomes weak. Their feathers become very heavy that they cannot even fly again. So when it gets to that point, the eagle will have to make a very difficult decision by removing its beak, its feathers, and then the talons. If you look at the toes of the beak, we call ours the fingernails, and then in birds we call it the talons. T-A-L-O-O-N. That's the talon. So when the eagle gets to 40 years, the beak, the feathers, and then the talons become weak. So it is up to the eagle to remove it so that new ones will grow. And removing the beak, the talons, and the feathers is a very difficult decision for the eagle. So those who cannot do it die at 40 years. And those who are able to remove their beak, all this process takes about 150 days. So the beak will remove the eagle will remove the beak, and then the new beak will grow. It will use the new beak to remove all the feathers for new feathers to grow, and then the talons will also be removed. And if these are removed, new ones will grow, and it will make the eagle stronger than even before. Stronger than even before. So that is the life of the bird eagle. And if you look at our coat of arms, you see that the coat of arms is protected by two eagles. As you see, our coat of arms also include two eagles. We have another bird called the falcon. The falcon. And the falcon is the fastest flying bird. The fastest flying bird. That is falcon. And it can fly 320 kilometers per hour. 320 kilometers per hour. So the falcon is the fastest flying bird. We also have the largest birds. The largest birds. And the first one is the ostrich. The first largest bird is the ostrich. And the second largest bird is the emu. And you see that they look almost the same. So the largest bird we have is the ostrich, and the second largest is the emu. So these are the large, and their eggs are also the largest. The eggs are also the largest. So today we looked at birds. Birds. We looked at what a bird is, examples of birds, and then some of the features of birds. Let's look at a summary for our lesson. You see a bird on the screen, and some of the features we talked about, we are going to identify on this bird. So the bird has a beak. The bird has a beak. What you see on top here, you normally find this on the heads of cocks or hen, and you call it comb. Comb. That part is called comb. The bird also has head, and this part is also showing the body of the bird. The bird also has tail, as we talked about, that it helps them in the direction they fly and also helps them in landing. They also have wings. And the birds have how many wings? Said two. They also have two legs, and there is the leg shown here. The bird also have an eye. This is the eye of the bird. And then lastly, the bird also have claws. And we said so many uses of the claws, that they use it to catch their prey, hold tree branches, fight, hold their food, and the rest. I believe you have learned a lot from this lesson. I believe you have learned a lot from this lesson. Now, take this homework. 1. State 3 examples of birds. State 3 examples of birds. We talked about a lot here, more than 10. So you state 3 examples of birds. And then second, mention 3 features of a bird. Mention 3 features of a bird. 1. State 3 examples of birds. Then 2. Mention 3 features of birds. Make sure you do your homework, and I expect you to get everything correct. So you end the lesson here, and see you next time. Bye-bye.